Yes, my name is Osterberg, and I work with the Swedish Research Council. And together with my colleague, we will present gender equality in research funding. And we have been doing some work on this together also with our former colleague, Carl Jacobsson, who is now retired. In She Figures and in other publications, it is shown that although gender equality is improving in higher education and research, it's far away from achieved. And this is, of course, an important work for the research institutions and universities to work with, but also research funding organizations can work on this, primarily by working with policies and in the research funding itself. And I will show you what we have been, the work we have done. We have also done some reports, 6.3 and 6.4. And the first one, the report 6.3, it was delivered 2 years ago, almost, in March 2021. And we will not present it so much today because it's based on, the data is getting a bit old, so we will put focus on the other part, the policy brief. But I want to say something about this report first. This report was built on a previous report from 2009 called the Gender Challenge in Research, which was made within the previous co-action called GenderNet. Our report contains of 3 parts. It was a literature review covering the years 2009 to 2019 over the topic gender differences and access to research. We also made a desktop study with data from OECD, She Figures, Gender Gap Index, and so on, covering all European countries and also the GenderNet Plus member countries. And then the third part in this report was that we made a survey, a collection of data from the GenderNet countries when we were more deep. The questions in the survey was covering grant awarding procedures or research funding systems, success rates by gender, transparency in procedures and systems, barriers to accountability of procedures, differences between disciplines, and selection of committees. From this report was summarized in a number of recommendations, and those recommendations form the base for the policy brief, which we made. Also the policy brief was built upon the former report from 2009, and also Science Europe Practical Guide to Improving Gender Equality in Research Organizations from 2017. When we made this policy brief, we had a workshop based on these recommendations from the report with 8 invited experts and also the GenderNet Plus Consortium. And this was an online meeting because it was during the pandemic, and in September 21. And then we had a draft version sent out for comments to the GenderNet Plus country members and the experts. And then 1 year ago, in February 2022, it was adopted by the GenderNet Plus. And the policy brief is divided into these 6 categories, and we will walk them through with you. So if we start with the first one, government instructions. At the national level, governments and ministries should apply extra pressure on RFOs by instructions or missions, which can be a very helpful measure to get gender equality going and to keep it going. So some pressure can be good. National resource centers on gender in research should be established and maintained to promote gender equality. And the last one on government instruction is that it's important that research funding in the field of gender equality in higher education will increase. The next category is gender equality plans. And I will do like this. These first three are of more structural nature, so I will take them together. It's important that the RFO leadership, as well as the whole RFO organization, are committed to gender equality. It's important that it's not just a question that is delegated to a human resources officer or something like that. So it must be a commitment through the whole organization, from the leadership and down. RFO should strive for gender equality in the higher education system, both by policies and cooperation and its own research funding. And also, there should be a permanent structure, like a department or a task group or something like that, at the RFO to monitor gender equality. And also, this department should report to the leadership at the RFO. And of course, they also need some resources to do this. Then about the plan itself, so to say. The RFO must develop and decide gender equality plan to promote gender equality in its research funding, and this plan can cover these topics: goal and targets for the research funding and the funding process, data on gender equality in the research funding, follow-up and analysis of how the goals are met, knowledge and methods for research reaching the goal, and clear responsibility in the organization for each goal, and by that consequences, action if the goals are not met. I will continue with the gender equality plan. Yes, another aspect is that it's the RFOs should work actively with gender equality throughout the organization, which can include to discuss gender and diversity in research funding with the RFOs, and to have also awareness-raising activities. Also to give gender equality training to both staff, panels and reviewers, and this could be also mandatory, especially to the panels. We have not mentioned gender-biased violence in the Higher Education Institute so far, but the RFOs can contribute to prevent this by demanding policy documents from the applying higher education institutions. Another thing that this is wrong order. It should be that one now. The RFOs can also conduct gender equality observations in panels for improving the assessment process, and also the RFOs must be aware that also initiative to promote gender equality can lead to greater burden to women and on disadvantaged groups when it comes to participate in committees and so on. Okay, Kent?
Continue the list. So we continue with the next Is it on this one? Yeah. So the third main point is about decision-making bodies and evaluation panels, and again balance all over. So these four first is to strive for the gender balance, at least 40% women and men in all these dimensions on decision-making bodies within the organization, RFSOs, and among the evaluators and the reviewers that they take into the evaluation process, and also have an effort to recruit more women to these panels of evaluators and reviewers, and also try to get the gender balance also in the chairman positions of the evaluation panels. But we also have a point with, if this is not possible, you can take other steps. So recommendation is one thing. The other thing is, if you can't fulfill the recommendations, you can do other things. And it's a very long recommendation in this. I think you have to read it for yourself, but take the next one, because there's a lot of recommendations. About monitoring, you have also heard in the other deliverables about monitoring exercises going on, and we saw it also in the report. The data collection is something you have to do for a certain purpose, and we also have to have goals and things to monitor and follow up on. By doing this annually, you can also have a possibility to find trends and other things in long time series. You can discover if it's a good progression or if it's a bad progression, a digression. And it's also very important to make it available, usable in other situations. The normal thing in Sweden, for example, is that in the annual report from the agency we use gender data on all dimensions. It's the way most agencies in Sweden have the data presented in, if possible, in the annual report. And that's a way of make it available publicly on a regular basis, one time a year. But you can also do it on the website and have it as data you can reuse. Another thing that we also saw when we wrote the report was the possibility to find the potential applicants in the science fields and see if you have a lot of women, no one is applying, it's something might be wrong, so we can do something about it. If you have a research infrastructure, you can also monitor on the gender balance of the use of the infrastructure and the access to the infrastructures, which also can then be presented by scientific fields. So if you can see the variance between the fields, if it's large or if in the normal span. We also had a discussion about the diversity, inclusion and intersectionality on the workshop. And of course it could be preferable to integrate all these things also, but there are legal constraints to integrity, at least in the European Union countries, that you can't just collect data on such things. But the recommendation is to give the task to someone else, commissioned to do research on these aspects. Then you can also have possibility to get, as an RFO, an insight into and then you also can have networks for exchange and discussion on these issues. You can discuss it, you don't use data, you use your knowledge. Another problem that has been discussed is how to increase funding applications, especially in these fields where women tend not to apply as much as men do, although they are represented in the scientific field, but they don't apply. So encouragement, of course, in the calls. Also try to get more attention on how you write the call texts from a gender perspective. So avoiding words or other things that might not be attracting women too much. The assessment criteria and the eligibility must neither favor men nor women. And you can also have some consideration on the scientific fields in new calls. Career paths are also something that can be monitored and studied yearly to see if there are specific paths that are not used by women but could be used by women in some way. The same goes for the excellence grants, for example. If you have a career path that over years has been more for excellence among professors, men professors, then it might be a way to see over how you use the excellent grants. And then also promote equal access for both genders to use the infrastructures. And one thing that is used at least at the Swedish Research Council is using the career age instead of the biological age when you look into the CVs. And also take in parental leave into account.
Could you just explain career age?
After you have finished your PhD, you start counting. So you're a senior researcher when you're like me. You're over 20 years since I finished my PhD. But you're a junior researcher when you're just...
So years, it's counted in
years, and yeah, you can use month if you want to, but depends on. Yeah, the parental leave, and also try to facilitate work-life balance in the funding forms, so you can prolong the length of a project if you have to take parental leave, so you can use the money longer than you were supposed to do when you started it if something happens. And also try to streamline application processes so you don't have too much obstacles. You can do it with digital tools today. So the last long list is about transparency in research funding, and that is something that can be or should be at least be improved. The procedures, criteria, and results should be made public so we can see them, but not all information, but it's possible to use data or see what's going on. The recruiting processes for evaluators and reviewers should also be made explicit and published so you know why are these people here. And some countries need to get over the national biases, so it's better perhaps to use international evaluators and reviewers. Conflicts of interest, unethical behavior, harassment, bullying, other forms of discrimination in decision-making or peer review should be have procedures to prevent all these so they don't be appear. And also have a constructive constructive evaluating feedback in writing, so you know what is good, what is bad. And that was that. All these. But it should be available on the project's websites also, precis like the other report.